Good morning. Now I'm sitting here at the mouth of the Davenox River. I'm going to share with you a wee bit of my life and what gave me the impulse to start the school and also where I am now at this stage in my life.
Hello listeners, Mandela here. I'm excited to announce that I've been in the recording studio working on an album with my good friend Steve Saroff. We just released our first single, and you can support our music by simply adding this song to your playlist on Spotify or Apple Music. To find our music, search for Didgeridoo River Meditation under the artist name Mandela van Eden.
Hi folks, my name is Chris and I'm the artist and co-founder at Explorer Maps.
Hi, this is Vanessa, Chris's wife. I have been a #1 fan of Chris's art since I first met him in the late 1990s. Which map will you get to help you treasure your own special times? Please be sure to use the promo code Mandela for a discount when you visit explorermaps.com.
Welcome to The Trail Less Traveled, an adventure radio series and podcast dedicated to collecting stories and sounds from around the world in order to take you back to mankind's earliest form of entertainment, storytelling. This episode was recorded on location in collaboration with Explorer Maps. Missoula, Montana is a mecca for outdoor enthusiasts, and each week we will bring you tales of adventure from both near and far, as well as information and inspiration and a few tunes to set the mood. You can subscribe to the podcast and learn about our international outreach projects at traillesstraveled.net. And now, here's your host, international expedition guide, conservationist, and yogi, Mandela.
We're sitting here in Africa in a thatch hut, and I'm very honored today to be sitting with a good friend of my grandparents. His name is Adriaan Mocke, and he is the founder of Olifkrans College, founded in 1964. Adriaan is a doer. At 88 years old, he has a library, a garden, and he is a consistent contributor to his community. Adriaan, my first question for you is, where did you grow up, and how was adventure a part of your childhood?
I was born in the northwest of the northern province, but really I can remember the best times. That was just outside Pretoria on a little farm. And I still remember, because we had neighbors, traditional Venda neighbors, living in huts and over weekends playing the drum and playing music. That was such a fascination for me and a privilege that I could live in such an environment. Fortunately, I read a book by Leipold. He was an Afrikaans writer, and he wrote a book on his visit to Dutch East India. And that opened a new world for me, a total new world, where there were old customs and connection with South Africa. So I was fortunate to be able to have this opening to the world. And I was still in high school that I showed a keen interest in my environment. And I think that's why I like to call myself a child of the Dutch East Indian Company. The first Mocke came from Domich on the Elbe in the time of the Dutch East Indian Company, and he was a master builder. The first mission church was built in Cape Town by him. The second one was the mill at the Alexander Institution. The third was his house that is still there, and also the Lutheran church where he went to. Oh yes, I must not forget, he married a free slave in 1771. And during the apartheid days, when I went to Europe, when I addressed Rotary or the International School in Switzerland, I showed my hand and I said, look, lily white, but in my veins are the blood of Sophia Plachman, the slave. So that gives me a very special connection, yes, with the Cape and with the culture of the Cape. I feel at home here. This is my environment.
I would love to talk to you about your school, founded in 1964, but let's talk about your life a little bit before that. For example, the Dutch East Indian Company. Many South Africans know it well, but for someone listening who doesn't know the history of the Dutch East Indian Company, can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, that was perhaps a wee bit a romantic period because it's a distance away. It's long ago. So I think there were also cruel things that happened during the Dutch East Indian Company. It was not always a bed of roses. For instance, now, my parents were both during the Anglo-Boer War in a concentration camp, in the British concentration camps in Bloemfontein and Butuli. If I look back, then I see this whole thing of reconciliation was already there with me, that we have to look forward and have to forgive and have to look wider. Where I find today to read about the Anglo-Boer War, to me it is still too near. It hurts. I don't want to sit with it all the time, where the Dutch East Indian Company is colourful. It's romantic. It's a rough time. It was a time for a man, because that was an organisation. It was not a government. They were trying to trade and things like that.
Where were those ships originating and where were they travelling to?
They were on their way to Batavia, on the island of Java. That's called now today Jakarta. And there they had a big centre. And what is so interesting, eventually, after a long battle, the Dutch gave Indonesia its independence. The Dutch language about disappeared completely. And people left. In South Africa, it is not the case. We are still here. We're still part of a rainbow nation. That is so wonderful.
Adriaan, can you tell us a little bit more about your parents and what it might have been like for them to be living in the concentration camp? And why were they in a concentration camp?
The middle of the Anglo-Boer War, the British realized that there was going to be guerrilla warfare. In other words, a commando, that's a group of people together, will go to a farm and get meat and get vegetables or whatever from the farm people. And they realize that the war will go on and on and on because they attack the British army, then they disappear, go and get some food and refreshments, and then go again. So they thought to stop that and bring all the women and children and old people to a camp. Mm-hmm. And that was at Butuli on the Orange River. There were several camps. There were also concentration camps for black people. In those days, people would still speak of black people or majority group. Mm-hmm. They also had to go to concentration camps because some of this majority group were also loyal to the Boers. So that is why there were concentration camps. There were great numbers, so it was not always a very positive thing because children died and there were different medical reasons why people couldn't make it. And that was a very sad time. I still have pictures of my parents, of a little sister in a coffin. That was so typical of that time, to do things like that. And another one where someone was really thin and looked undernourished. And after the war, they were, especially in the northern provinces, bitter feeling against the British, where in the south there were a conciliation, more a liberal approach, holistic. We want to work together with Britain for a bigger cause. That was still an evolution that they had to go through in the north, because what happened in the Anglo-Boer War was still too fresh and too near.
For someone listening who has no knowledge of the Anglo-Boer War, can you tell us what was that situation?
Not the province Free State, but what was called Gauteng in the northern parts of the country, that was called the Transvaal. They discovered gold, and they had thousands of what they called uitlanders, people from all over the world, from America and from London and from Germany and everywhere. It was like a mine town, mine city. The Boers that wanted to get away from the British colony wanted their own little Boer republic. And here, all of a sudden, thousands of foreigners came. It was mainly about the rights to vote. And Paul Kruger, that was the president, was reluctant to give them the voting right, because that would meant that they will be outnumbered. And so the great trick, or their movement to the Transvaal, away from Britain, was in vain.
I just think it's important to point out for the listener, when you say Boer, what does that mean?
That's very interesting. In the early days, the people of the countryside were called Boers, were called farmers. I know, for instance, in England, a farmer is someone with a country house or a family seat, where if you want to insult someone in Holland, well, that was years ago, then you would say, don't act like a Boer. In other words, don't be a little bit rough. Yes. Today, we don't use this anymore. In those days, they were very proud of the name Boer.
Yeah. And I believe that my family ancestry are a Boer, Afrikaner.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're sitting here at a place called San Sebastian. When we come back, we're going to learn more about San Sebastian and how important this place is for Adriaan Mocke, who is my guest today. We're sitting in the bush under a thatch hut. It's a nice rainy day and we're drinking tea inside.
A vernacular style. That is important to remember, that the little houses here, you still find little houses like this at San Sebastian, at Puntjie, nearby, on the island of Texel, Madeira, Lüneburger Heide, and in the plains of Hungary. Also, little thatch. It's very vernacular, it's very simple. You use the material from around you. There are no big trees, so you don't build a wooden house because there are no trees. And you have to bring your trees to make the rafts from far.
We're in South Africa at a place called San Sebastian, and we're sitting under a thatch hut. I'm sitting here with Adriaan Mocke. This place is very special. This is a place where I spent a large chunk of my childhood, and it's here today largely in part to the man who's sitting with me. And so, Adriaan, I'd love to just talk to you now about San Sebastian from the very beginning. And I believe that this story involves my grandparents, and I'm just very excited, honestly, to sit here and listen and learn.
It was in 1978 that we bought San Sebastian. But it's a wee bit of a story, because this property here, it's at the mouth of the Davenox River. It's still very much a protected area. Both sides is nature conservation, and it's still beautiful and not a build-up area. So this is very special. And I bought a share before we decided as a group of people will buy a property here. And I could never manage, to see the place because there were no road. Mm-hmm. There was just the dunes. And I said, somewhere in the dunes is my property. In a way, fortunately, Translandia went bankrupt. And Kobus van Eerden, that is your grandfather, he said to me, let us buy this property on an auction. So we went early that morning to Heidelberg, that's near a little town here, to the hotel. And the local doctor in Swellendam said to me, Adriaan, don't do it. It's just trouble. Your children won't like it. It's too far away from everything. And we got the property. And I must tell you that over the years, it meant so much to my family and my children. I've got a son, Gottfried, that's one winemaker, 3 daughters that are in the teaching profession. They all, with their children, enjoy San Sebastian so much because this beautiful beach, long and isolated, it is so beautiful and so special.
So this is a radio show, as you know.
Yeah.
The person listening isn't able to sit with us today in the thatch hut. So maybe could you tell us about these huts that we live in? Why are they special? Where do the materials come from? And how these huts are representative of this place and how we're trying to protect it and have it be a conservation by not building big castles and houses like you see in town. Take us deep into the essence of San Sebastian.
What makes it so very special is that the simplicity to live here, to come for a holiday here. You have to bring everything along. It takes roughly about an hour to come here from town, and you live a simple life. It is so different from any other place. You can't go to a shop.
Wasn't San Sebastian going to be developed at one point, right before you purchased it?
Oh, they wanted to have plots for big houses, and fortunately the administrator was against the development because according to him there were not enough water. Praise the Lord that we haven't got enough water because we have a few wells, old wells. Look, people were here in 1880 around. They came to camp here with an ox wagon. It was always simple. They came for fishing, and they would never have a barbecue or what we call a braaivleis barbecue. They will cook inside where there was a stove.
Adriaan, can we talk about the hut? Can you talk a little bit about the thatch and how it grows just outside?
Yeah, the thatch is growing all over this area. And one can understand it, that when they came here and they wanted to build a property, because it's mainly sand, for them to build a mud house or a clay house or a brick house, because they were simple people. They couldn't afford that, and this is not a very fertile part. It's beautiful because it's got beautiful indigenous shrubs. It's all indigenous. Amongst these shrubs, you have what we call the dekriet. That is the thatch that we thatch these little houses with. And that is the same on Madeira, that they also use a type of a thatch. There are only a few left. And I think this was instinctive. I don't think it was something that they copied or they remember from a previous time. I think this was, here we are. We would like to build a little house. We cut it with a sickle, the thatch, and we put it up, and there you are. Yeah. And everywhere here you see very funny succulent plant. I don't know what you will call that in English. Haringboom. And that they use, instead of eucalyptus, they use that.
If you've just tuned into The Trail Less Traveled, we're recording in my family's hut here in the most southern tip of Africa. And we're looking up at the structure. It's very similar to the hut that Adriaan has at his home. So there's timber beams with bamboo running horizontally and then thatch attached.
Yeah.
So what is the haringboom?
Yeah, this where the eucalyptus rafters.
This one?
That.
Okay.
They used to put haringboom there. Before it was imported from Australia.
So if you were to look out the window and describe where you are right now to someone listening in America, how would you describe where you are right now?
There are a couple of big rivers. Let's travel from Cape Town. You get a few rivers. You get what they call the Brede River. You get the rivier zonder end, the river with an out end, and then this one. This is a very special river because it has not been spoiled. I think we mentioned that before. And it's protected still. And I think most people that's got a little house here care for that. They want it to stay like that.
Just outside we have the tall sand dunes, and on the other side, what's there on the other side? What ocean is that?
This is the Indian Ocean,
Yeah.
And then the Atlantic will meet the Indian Ocean. So this is the warm stream here.
What are some of the animals that you can find here?
Pheasants, very interesting, not the guinea fowl. The guinea fowl only trekked down from Central Africa after 1790. And they are mainly where they can go to wheat fields and cornfields. That's where they go, the guinea fowl. So here you find pheasants and you find ostriches. And not far from here is a camp where they have buffaloes and small buck. Little, what do you call it? What will you call a rooikat?
A red cat, wildcat?
Yeah, something, quite a variety. Yeah.
It was while we were living internationally, about 11 years ago, that Explorer Maps first started. When Chris and his brother Greg decided to join forces and bring the maps to the whole wide world. Hi, this is Vanessa, Chris's wife. Each map is a labour of love, and I am lucky enough to see them all grow step by step from the early research and planning stages onto a large white piece of paper, through penciling, inking, and finally seeing the real magic happen as Chris adds the colour. As each one reaches the end phase, I get to examine them closely in the hope that I spot any unfinished bits before Chris sends them off. But there's always new illustrations to see every time. I love going to the Missoula warehouse when we're in Montana to see each unique map on the incredible range of products that Explorer Maps now has. Having lived away from home and families for the past 17 years, our aim of connecting people and place is very poignant to me. And for that reason, my favourite maps are Flathead and the Maasai Mara, because these two places are central to our extended family gatherings and where we have made the best of memories. Which map will you get to help you treasure your own special times? Please be sure to use the promo code Mandela for a discount when you visit explorermaps.com.
Adriaan is the founder of Olifkrans College, founded in 1964. That college is now located on the main street in Swellendam, South Africa. And Adriaan is a doer. At 88 years of age, he has his library, his garden, and he is a consistent contributor to his community. And that school is a part of that giving back to the community. So Adriaan, I'd love to just talk to you now about your school, Olifkrans College.
When we started the school in 1964, we very much inspired by the kibbutz idea. And we thought that you can bring handicapped people together in such a setup. But we had absolutely no money, but we had a lot of enthusiasm. We got a property of a Mrs. Cox that left the country under a cloud. She was politically not suitable for South Africa at that time, so she left. She said we can use her house on this little farm. It had furniture and everything, and then a Mr. James turned up, and he said he will then erect buildings for 25,000 chickens, and we must do the work. So we got 9 young men from the Department of Labor, and we started not a school, but such a kibbutz-like settlement at Pot River. We were so enthusiastic. We really wanted to do things, and without money, I don't know still how we managed that. But then towards the end of that year, we realized that it's better to start earlier with the education of children, because they are already so much settled in their ways when they arrive from the Department of Labor, that we got then this idea that we should go to a town, because at Bot River, where we started this kibbutz, it was far away from everything. And we decided we would like to develop this project into a school. We were looking around for a little town where there are streets, chemists, post office, and everything that you need for the education of young people. Because a school cannot be like an island. It must be part of the environment of the town. Eventually, the school developed special care for intelligent young people that find difficulties with their schooling. In other words, we moved away from the word handicapped to more remedial. And that is the school today. So we have children that are perhaps had not a good educational beginning that came to us, and we were always an open school. Right in what we used to call apartheid days, we were an open school. Children from all walks of life came to us. And the mayor of the town is always our patron, and we experienced never in those early days problems with that. I think also that you look at things in a positive way. And still today, it's a privilege. My daughter is now the principal, and she's doing a wonderful job, better than I have ever dreamt of doing. She's running the school with her husband and my middle daughter, Amy, and it's wonderful, the strong support of my wife. It is a whole community school, and we have mainly children from all over South Africa, from Johannesburg, from Cape Town, and we even had in the past, now with the virus, things have changed quite a lot. We had a lad from the Bahamas, we have one from Italy and from Amsterdam, and so it's wonderful. And it's not a total boys' school today. The hostel side is all for lads, for boys, but the school, the day school, is also open for girls. I have what we call a reading room. The reading room, it looks like a wee bit like a chapel, but it's got a marvelous collection of books. We do functions there, we have meetings there, and the community can use it. Not for wild parties, but for serious functions, and it works very well. for instance, a function on the royal families of Swellendam and the royal families of the world exhibition. You can't believe that we had royal families in Swellendam.
And I think once I went and played my didgeridoo in your reading room.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then, for instance, we got a couple of months ago presentation of books in Estonian and Swedish and in Russian, and it was handed over by the ambassador of the European Union. And so we do exciting things. And at the moment we are busy with an exhibition on Desmond Tutu, because Desmond Tutu got the freedom of Swellendam a couple of years ago, and he also came to Swellendam before that time. We have a marvelous connection with him. He was a man with lovely humour. We always enjoy his company so much. I still remember that he pointed to his nose and he said, "Look, my nose, I'm a black Jew because my big nose I have." And when he asked the Catholic priest, Father Urban, did not understand the humour, he said to Father Urban, when they met, he said, "Tell me a few good confessions." But that was a joke. It was not a serious question. He didn't want him to tell him confession. And Father Urban stood at attention and he said, "Keep thou mouth." To Desmond Tutu. When I met him afterwards, he always referred to Father Urban to say, "That's it, keep thou mouth." Beautiful.
Adriaan, a little earlier you were talking about how your school was an open school, even during the years of apartheid.
Yeah.
Someone listening who doesn't understand apartheid or why it would have been a problem to have an open school in the 60s, can you tell us a little bit about that?
That was the policy of the government at that time. I think we bet again the problem of Paul Kruger in the Transvaal, that had the problem of the influx of foreigners to the gold mines, thousands. And here, every government in South Africa had the problem. They wanted to find a solution for the voting rights of the majority group. That is the Xhosas, the Vendas, all the different groups. And they tried to avoid that. Even the previous governments, also the colonial governments, they all tried to avoid that. And then Hendrik Verwoerd came, and he tried, in a way, to solve this problem with small states, what they called Bantustans. That was, in other words, for every tribe will have its own little community that it eventually will become independent. But if we look today, I mean, that was impossible, because there must be partnership. Otherwise, you cannot. You can't say to people, "No, you go there, you organize your own little country there. We will support you, but that's your job." And that's what they had in mind. They thought they had a solution for a problem of the majority group, because they realize, and fortunately, shall I say, what was so wonderful, that Mandela then came, and he and de Klerk and people like Desmond Tutu came forward with such a positive, wonderful approach. That was really an example, not only for South Africa, but for the rest of the world. And I would say even a man like Ramaphosa today, it's not always easy for him, because he's got a difficult task, but I think he is sincere in what he tries to do.
And Cyril Ramaphosa is the current president of South Africa, if you're listening and you don't know who that is. Well, Adriaan, it was such a pleasure to speak with you and learn about your life. I just wanted to say thank you for your time and energy joining me on the Trail Less Traveled.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a privilege that I could speak to you, so energetic and young and wonderful, and here with your mother as well. Yeah.
Can we end your show with some advice for the listener? Maybe some advice on life?
Well, if I think of myself, is that when you approach a time like this, when you're not a spring chicken, you have to decide, are you going to lie in bed the whole day, or are you going to walk? Are you going to do things? That is number one, that you have to do things. You have to get out of bed. If you look at longevity, people live much longer when they have to go and feed the pig on the hill every day, walking up there, or go and do things. It's so important to walk and to do things. And then further, to be aware of your gardens. I still look today after the gardens of the school, and we have beautiful rose hedges, plumbago hedges. It really looks lovely, because that was left of the old Victorian gardens in Swellendam, the rose hedges. That is important for me, that you have a garden, that you have books, that you see people, also young people, and that you are still involved in a community. When people want to build a monstrosity in town, then you get yourself involved. You do something about it. That, to me, is what I want to keep doing.
Namaste, Missoula. Mandela here, your host of the Trail Less Traveled, the Trail 1033's locally harvested adventure radio series, which premieres every Sunday night from 6 to 7 Mountain Time. You can stream the show live online at trail1033.com. And remember, if you missed the premiere, it's also a podcast, available everywhere. You can follow the adventure as it unfolds by visiting the official website, which hosts the full show archive of over 600 episodes, by visiting traillesstravel.net. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank a small family business based in Missoula, Montana, with roots in Africa, Explore Maps. Explore Maps and the Trail Less Traveled have teamed up to connect people and place through their story maps, art, history, culture, conservation, and community outreach. You can learn more by visiting exploremaps.com. For many years, people have been asking me to produce some didgeridoo music, and I wanted to share with you that my friend Steve Saroff and I have released a single on Spotify and Apple Music. You can support our music by simply adding this song to your playlist. In order to find it, search for Didgeridoo River Meditation under the artist name Mandela van Eden. That's it for this week's adventure, my friends in Missoula and around the world. But until next week, please remember, living in Missoula with access to public lands and waters is certainly a privilege, and with privilege comes responsibility. Please get informed, get engaged, and speak up on behalf of wildlife and wild places. Like we say in Africa, if you think you're too small to make a difference, then you've never spent the night with a mosquito.